today we are going to be talking about women in STEM, specifically focusing on how to encourage women and girls to join and remain in STEM industries. I'm joined today by a special guest, Nobukhosi Dlamini. She has a long list of experience and accomplishments in the tech sector. Notably, she is the founder of Bahati Tech, a data protection and cybersecurity company, as well as the founder of the Girls in FinTech, or GIFT Foundation, which mentors and encourages young girls from informal settlements in Cape Town to pursue careers in the fintech sector. So thank you so much for joining us today, Nobukhosi.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so to start off, could you tell us a bit about the GIFT Foundation's mission and what prompted you to start this organization?
Thank you. So, well, I've been in tech for a number of years, and obviously, as many of you will know, there's a huge gender gap in the active participants between men and women. And it was always something that I found a bit odd because when I went to university, I think I've told you this before, when I started in first year, there was sort of a 50-50 split between guys and girls in the class. But as we were progressing with our training, the girls were just dropping off. And by the time we graduated from university, I think there must have been at least maybe 10% or less girls, and the rest were boys. And even then, out of all those girls that did graduate with a computer science degree, a lot of them decided they didn't want to remain in the sector. So they went into non-technical careers like consulting, HR, risk management, that sort of thing. So it was always like something that bothered me. Like, why are there so many men versus women? Because women are equally as capable. Women, have are 50, at least 50% of the users of technology. So we need equal representation if we're going to understand what our customers want to see and be able to deliver, relatable technology. And as I was obviously going ahead with my career, I decided to start this foundation to encourage girls from a really young age, so sort of teenagers, high school, to let them understand that they have they belong in that space. Because one of the things I've picked up looking back is that the culture is really geared towards like a boys club, and the women who sort of remain there are those kind of girls who can, for lack of a better word, socialize with the guys and get along with the guys. For you to succeed, you have to be like, one of the boys in that space, which is ridiculous because that has actually nothing to do with the job. It has nothing to do with understanding or building technology at all, or building software or any of the things that we do in the industry. And a lot of the girls who can't, who don't feel comfortable in that space, would eventually just feel out of space up until they feel like, you know what, this is not for me, and leave and go somewhere else where they feel more welcome, where they feel like they belong. So there's a lot of work for us to do in encouraging girls to know that they do belong, and that the culture doesn't have to be that, because culture is created by people, right? The people in the space are the ones who create a culture. Culture is not handed down to us. It's not something that's static, it's dynamic. We create it every single day. And it's the people who feel comfortable, who take ownership of those environments, of those spaces, who are able to drive and shape and mold the culture to be what they want. And so my work in the GIFT Foundation is really allowing girls to understand that firstly, they have what it takes, that they belong in those spaces, so that even if they do go to college or university, or even have careers in tech, if they find that, they walk into environment that is hostile, or that is not accepting of who they are, or trying to change them to be something that they're not, that they already have that inherent belief and confidence that they belong in that space, and that they can express themselves fully as who they are within that space, without having to assimilate and become something that they're not. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but basically that's why I started the GIFT Foundation.
Yeah, that's an amazing mission that you have, and just to highlight how important it is and how real that culture of the boys club that you mentioned is, there's actually a term in the tech industry known as programmers, which refers to just that. And the fact that there's a term with a solid definition isn't a great sign. So it's great that you're doing something about that. So, in giving these girls that confidence, making them understand that this is a place where they belong, and in addition to that, giving them educational support and the skill development that they need to succeed in this area, I'm wondering, what are the wider impacts you expect to see from programs like this on a bigger societal and economic level?
Well, we focus a lot on girls who come from really poor backgrounds, like you mentioned, girls from informal settlements in Cape Town, but also girls from just rural communities. So these girls come from communities where there's high poverty levels and high unemployment rates. So them having access to this kind of training really does improve their prospects economically, and gives them opportunities to explore, careers that they probably wouldn't have been able to reach towards, which I think is something that we should all be doing. In my country, but I think in many countries all over the world, this young generation is really feeling the brunt of the economic climate that we're in, where a lot of young people are either unemployed or underemployed, or have high levels of college debt and things like that. So we do focus a lot on the economic empowerment of it, and supporting them to gain access to these careers. But also, women, when they live in poverty, they become really vulnerable to a lot of ills in society, like abuse and manipulation and so on. So when a woman is not financially stable or financially independent and dependent on someone else, they become vulnerable to exploitation, in many different ways. And that's one of the challenges that we have in Cape Town in South Africa. And giving young women skills and helping them to become financially independent, and being able to lift themselves up, also, allows them to move out of those kind of situations. Obviously, it's not the only thing that traps people in abuse, but it's one of the key factors. If people are financially dependent, they find it difficult to leave an abusive situation. And also, I don't know who said this, but there's this saying that when you educate a girl, you uplift the entire family, economically. Whereas if you educate a guy, he goes off and lives his best life, which is fine. Guys can go off and live their best life, but girls normally would take the responsibility, the additional responsibility to help the rest of the family, which in poor communities is what we do see quite regularly. So there's a lot of other spin-offs on a wider scale, other than just them having technical skills and being able to achieve or strive towards certain careers.
So, this concept of the cycle of poverty that you've alluded to, and breaking that cycle, that is something that affects both boys and girls from disadvantaged communities. But what are the additional gender related barriers specific to girls that inhibit them from breaking that cycle and also from joining STEM industries?
So one of the things that unfortunately we do see in poor communities, with the lack of healthcare that sometimes is there, is, you know, teenage pregnancy. And then as soon as, you know, a young girl falls pregnant, you know, sometimes they drop out of school, or, you know, they stop aspiring to anything because now they're a mother and they have the additional responsibility of bringing up a child. And soon after that, they might fall pregnant again, you know. So that's one thing that really becomes a burden for girls more than boys. You know, if a guy makes a girl pregnant, he still continues going to school. His life is largely unaffected. And that becomes the barrier. But also there's just that expectation um, in certain communities where a girl is just expected to, you know, get married, start a family. You know, why are you running around learning computers? What is this gonna do for you? Whereas with guys, guys are expected to tinker with things and play around and figure things out and explore, and they're sort of encouraged in a way to explore things that the family might not understand, because a lot of the time these STEM careers, the family might not be exposed to it, so they might not understand, you know, what are you talking about, programming, what's programming. And even if the family doesn't understand it, for a boy, they'll let the boy go, and okay, so he's doing something, we don't quite know what it is, but okay. Whereas if it's a girl, you know, it's not that simple. So there's so many issues that inhibits girls from achieving certain things. And that's why, like, in the GIFT Foundation, we really work with communities. So we don't just target girls, we target communities. And then once we form a relationship with community leaders or NGOs that work within a community, then we identify girls from there, because that helps us to retain them over a longer period of time, because you know, the parents won't question where you're going, because, you know, it came from a community leadership position, and we have that relationship that's ongoing with the community.
The importance of a community-based approach makes so much sense because those gender roles and those cultural norms are um, upheld by society as a whole and can't be broken down on an individual level. So I love that you're taking that approach. So when we started this conversation, you mentioned STEM as an industry in which a lot of women and girls feel like they just don't belong. And on that note, a lot of women and girls just shy away from even the words science, technology, engineering, and math. They can be a bit daunting. And research shows that this happens at a very young age. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the classic example of asking school children to draw a scientist. And at age 5 or 6, school kids draw about an even percentage of male and female scientists. But by ages 7 and 8, the amount of female scientists is cut in half. And by age 14, there's about 4 times as many male scientists as female scientists. So clearly, something isn't quite right in the education system, which is something frightening to think about. And I'm wondering, Nobukhosi, why do you think this is happening and how can we prevent it from continuing?
Well, I'm not a psychologist, so I'll just tell you my layman's take on it. And based on my personal experience as well, I think we sort of expect boys to be to have that interest in mathematics and technical subjects. Whereas with girls, we sort of expect them maybe, you know, to write long essays, study English, read literature, you know, read poems and that sort of airy fairy stuff. And sometimes subconsciously, parents who come with that unconscious bias in the way that they approach, like encouraging their children to take certain subjects, they might do that as well. And it also, look at the toys that parents buy for girls versus the toys that they'll buy for boys. They'll buy, Lego for the boy to try and build things and break things and put them together. Whereas with girls, they might buy dolls or something that is not really technical or doesn't require them to develop their analytical thinking as much. But also within the school system, I had an experience, and I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, where I was approached by our maths teacher to join a computer science class that they were starting. They were starting. I went to a school that didn't offer computer science in high school, but they wanted to start. So they selected a couple of us from our maths class, and they said, okay, we'd like you to go and learn computer science. And then there were a couple of boys as well in that class. So, and the teacher was male. And that teacher in the computer science class put the girls on one side and the boys on the other side. And I kid you not, he did not look at the girls at all the entire time we were in that class. And there were some really intelligent girls in that class, but he even if a girl put her hand up, he would not point at her. If he asked a question, he would look at the boys, and he would be like, even like the way you mentioned people's pronouns, like you'd be like, okay, guys, so guys, we're gonna do this, and it's all about the guys. And hello, there are some girls in this class who are just like sidelined. And I think he felt that it was just a waste of time, of his time, to bring those girls into that class, because he had already probably figured out in his mind that these girls were not going to make it in this class. So I actually dropped out of that class. Funny enough, I dropped out because I was like, this is ridiculous. This guy is rude. I'm not going to stay here and put up with this. So I dropped out of that class, and I picked up computer science in university when I went to university. And after a while, I was like, then I remembered, because I even forgot about it. Then I remembered, oh, so this is what we were trying to learn in that class that I dropped out of when I was in high school. So there is that perception that, girls are not going to make it. And it's probably like professors who've worked before and historically they've seen that it's boys who pass their subjects. So they've just decided that they pass because they're boys, and they generally just don't give girls the time of day or an equal chance to actually learn. Or if a girl makes a mistake or says something wrong, it's because she's a girl that she made the mistake. Whereas if a boy gives the wrong answer, try and help him. But if a girl gives the wrong answer, it's like, oh yeah, you girls don't get it. Just bundle them all up and paint them as idiots. So those are some of the things that discourage women and make them feel like, I don't want to be in this space, because who would want that? Everybody wants to be in an environment where they feel welcome, they feel like they have a fighting chance, especially when you're choosing a career. And it's scary when you're choosing a career and you're thinking, I have to do this for the rest of my life. You really want to choose something that you feel like you have a chance at being happy in. And if every day you come to class or whatever, and every day you're being put down and belittled, after a while you'll be like, I don't want this. I don't want to continue with this. So there's a lot that needs to change from the parenting side, but also from like professors and teachers as well.
Thank you for sharing your experience on that. It's just another perfect example of why we need to break those cultural norms and address those unconscious biases. And unfortunately, I don't think your experience is unique in that way. I think most girls have experienced that on one level or another. So just emphasizes the importance of having programs like the Gift Foundation in this space. So just for the last question today, before moving on to questions from the audience, we know that the pandemic has inhibited schooling for both boys and girls in both developed and underdeveloped countries. But in the more underdeveloped countries, we're learning that girls who are being taken out of school right now because of the pandemic are far less likely to rejoin once the pandemic ends, which will obviously only put the fight for gender equality further behind. So I'm wondering how the Gift Foundation has pivoted during the pandemic to keep offering some sort of skill development or support to your girls.
Sure, that's a really difficult question that you're asking, and I think yes, there's a part that we can play as small NGOs, but I've been encouraged to see like some really influential women speaking out about this. I know, for example, Melinda Gates wrote a letter to the presidents of the world, as it were, talking about how this pandemic has disproportionately affected women versus men. And there's a whole lot of other leaders who've done that. Whether that's been taken up in how countries are responding to the pandemic, I don't know, but those voices are there, and those influential women are really trying to speak out. From our side, it's been really challenging because we work with girls who wouldn't, for example, have a computer at home, who wouldn't have a laptop, who don't have access to the internet at home. And one of the things, like in third world country, is cost of accessing the internet is much higher than it would be in a first world country, which is ridiculous, but that's just how it is. So you have parents who are being affected, who have had their livelihoods affected, and do you ask them to buy bread for their children or to buy data for the internet? And it's challenging. So we had to sort of put our program on hold for a bit. And while that was on hold, we wanted to keep the relationship with the communities going, because the community is really the key to our success. So we went and identified small business owners, like women who have traditional businesses, so non-tech enabled businesses, like women who were like dressmakers, who were in catering businesses, whatever businesses they had, but they were not tech enabled, and we helped them to pivot so that they could transact and operate digitally. And which is what everybody was doing in the pandemic. Nobody could go anywhere, so people were online most of the time. And in South Africa, the penetration of mobile phones is really high. So almost everybody is accessing the internet at some level on their phone, which really helped us to keep our programs going and to keep that community engagement going, and also to expand that engagement into other communities where we were not there previously. But we are now regrouping and really trying to refocus our attention on the girls. We fundraising, for laptops that the girls can actually take home, or gadgets like tablets and so on that they can take home and be able to work on. And it's challenging because we don't really fully understand what is the world going to look like after COVID. Will we go back to the way things were? Um, is life going to just be different now? And what does that look like? So I wouldn't say we fully have everything figured out, but we sort of working it as we go along, and really trying to adjust so that we still are able to focus on our core market, and deliver the promise of training these girls.
Nobukhosi, I don't think anybody feels they have anything figured out during this time, so you're not alone in that sense. But what you're doing is amazing, and I think it's an example of how technological innovation is going to be key in supporting women and supporting gender equality in the future. And it's a topic that I'm personally super fascinated in. So we'll have to talk about that more sometime in the future. So we would now like to open the floor to questions from the audience. If you have a question, feel free to either use the raise hand function and I will filter from there, or you can also use the chat function if you would prefer that I read the question out for you. Yes, Michael.
Hi, thank you so much, Nobukhosi, for coming in and doing this. I really appreciate it. I personally learned a lot. I kind of wanted to ask you about, so you talk a lot about this community approach and how we need to sort of foster this community in which feminism is part of its core. What are some small actions that we as individuals can take in order to sort of build and foster that community? Because, you know, it's as a nebulous, it's an amazing concept and prospect, but it's difficult to kind of find where do we start?
Sure. I think it's firstly not going in with your own intentions. Like I have my own agenda, I can put it that way, of giving technology training. But when you start a community or you want to form those partnerships, you have to put that on the back burner and, you know, try to understand where people are coming from, understand what their challenges are, understand how you can help them to address some of those challenges. Maybe not yourself, maybe you can bring in other NGOs, introduce them to that space so that, you know, you build that level of trust, so that people open up and they're like, okay, thank you so much for helping us with this. And then you're like, yes, and you know what else I can do? I've seen there's some girls wandering around here on a Saturday morning. You know, why don't we get them together and we can teach them this? So it's really not, you know, bulldozing your way and trying to just push your agenda, but it's really about first understanding where people are at, what are the critical challenges, how can you support? Sometimes you can't even support, but being there to listen, being there to just support, it builds that relationship, and that relationship really is everything, which is why even when we couldn't offer the training, we still wanted to maintain that contact with the communities, because that relationship is really powerful, and that's our secret sauce, really. That other NGOs who might want to come and operate in the space that we're in, they might have more resources than us, they might have more staff than us and everything, but sometimes the programs don't have the same effect or the same level of success just because they don't have that level of intimate relationship with the community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the speech once again.
All right, we have a second question in the chat from Jade. Jade asks, what would you say is the best way to get more people involved in the conversation for gender equality?
I don't know. What I do is really help people understand that, you know, how gender equality is to the benefit of everybody. You know, sometimes when people have been in a position where they have influence, and they have privilege and so on, when you start saying, oh, we need to also bring up this group, then they feel a bit threatened, like you're gonna take away something from them. So it's helping them understand, like, if we uplift women, you know, the challenges that you face in this community around drug related problems, problems of women abuse, problems of youth unemployment, teenage pregnancies, and so on. You know, we could address those issues by providing this support. So it helps them achieve their objectives at the same time, and they're able to see, you know, and understand that, okay, so helping women is not gonna, you know, in some communities people think, oh, if you empower all these women, then women will start being what's the right word for it, you know, they'll start undermining men, and they won't be submissive to men, and so on. You know, in some communities you don't mention the word feminism because it's like a swear word, and but you need to find a way to articulate what you want to say using the right language, and speaking their language, and speaking to their issues specifically.
You're so right. In this space, I mean, in the space of gender equality, you need to be brave, you need to be bold, you need to be comfortable making other people uncomfortable, and you need to be okay sitting in your own discomfort at times, because that will happen. So thank you so much, Nobukhosi, for being here today, and having such an insightful conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And all the best to all of you at DFN.